What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again with another video. Today is the Toronto Maple Leafs 2023-2024 season preview. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the player previews. I put an end to them because they weren't really getting a lot of views. People weren't watching them anymore. So for the people that did watch them, thank you so much. And if you are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Join the squad. I'd love to have you guys here. I'm a huge Leaf fan. This wall here that people seem to not like is under renovations. It's coming. Stuff is going to be moved here. It's going to look better, I do promise. But we're going to be talking about the Leafs this year. We're going to be seeing, are they going to improve? Are they going to impress? Are they going to regress? We're going to talk all about that. There's so many changes to the team. This is a completely different squad, and we're going to get to talk about it. So let's talk about some things that are the same. Going into this season, the biggest thing that people were talking about was the core four, right? Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, William Nylander. Were they going to stay on this team? And well, they're still on this team. And the guy that was making those decisions was Kyle Dubas. And Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan, well, maybe there was some undercover beef there. Maybe there was some undercover problems. It didn't work out, and Kyle Dubas is now the president and GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Brad Treliving was hired to be the Leafs GM. So some new faces, some similar faces, and one of those similar faces is Sheldon Keefe, the head coach. That was another big question mark going into the season. Everybody was wondering if Sheldon Keefe was going to stick around, and he ended up sticking around. I guess that playoff win, that series win, is what potentially kept him here. And he's going to be on a short leash because, as you guys know, when a new GM comes in, they like to replace the coach. It happens very often. If they get off to a bad start, I can almost guarantee there's going to be a coaching change. If they have a poor season, of course, there's definitely going to be a coaching change. But if Sheldon Keefe, with new players and a new style of this game, can improve, and maybe this is his style of team, maybe the guys that they brought in are his style, maybe this works out. Maybe it's a good thing that these players have brought him a new chance to be a better NHL head coach. And of course, as we know, some players have gone out, some players have come in. We've made so many videos on this channel about it, but some highlights. Obviously, the biggest one, a guy like Michael Bunting not being on this team anymore, and then you have guys like Kerfoot and Hall. There's just a bunch of guys that are no longer with this team. They were traded, or they were gone in free agency. They just traded Sam Lafferty. But the Leafs brought in some interesting names, much like a John Klingberg for that top four on the blue line. They brought in some toughness in Ryan Reeves, and they brought in that pest attitude and that scoring attitude and that depth that they need in Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi, who a lot of people thought would get a max 3 to 4 year deal, but ended up with like a 1 year deal. You kind of figure he was going to get a little bit more money and a lot more term, but we'll get to that in other videos because it looks like we're going to be talking about a potential extension, hopefully as soon as possible. Now, if we're looking back on last year's team, they were successful in the regular season and 82 games played. We will check that in a second. They had 111 points. But what the biggest thing is that they made the playoffs, and they finally won a round. They beat Tampa in the first round. It feels like forever ago, but then they got stomped by the Florida Panthers. And even in that series against Tampa, while they did win, at some points they looked a little lucky, and at some points they didn't look as good as they were getting credit for. And as a Leaf fan, of course, I was very excited. I wanted them to win. I was pumped. But there was still part of me that was like, there's got to be more than this. They've got to play better than this. And they ended up losing in that second round to Florida. Florida went all the way to the Cup. They were an underdog team that was underperforming, but then performed at the level they could have performed at because they were a President's Trophy team the year before that. So all of that said, going into this year, you have to look at where they were last year. Second in the division, right? Boston was very good last year. Tampa was exceptional last year. Florida was pretty decent. And, of course, you've got teams like Buffalo and Ottawa and even Detroit and even Montreal. All these teams improved in the offseason. But I still think if the Leafs can improve on this 111-point season, which had 50 wins, 21 losses, and 11 OT losses, I have a feeling that this team has a chance to win the division. They've made obvious changes, and we've touched on those, but this team has to perform. With the way that Boston is looking this year, they're not as good as last year. Tampa, in my opinion, is not as good, and of course, they're not going to be with Andrei Vasilevsky for like probably 2 months, which is huge. And I'm knocking on what I want him to come back. I mean, you always want to face the best of the best, and I enjoy watching him play. Not against the Leafs, but I enjoy watching him play. Florida, I mean, I expect Florida to be good this year, but I think Toronto is better than them. So the Leafs have a chance to really, in a full season, not just in the the COVID and the Canadian League type stuff, they need to win this division. Now, there's a player that I've left out in terms of additions, and there's actually a couple. We could talk about Matthew Knies, but we've seen a little bit of him in the playoffs, and he looked really good, and then he got injured. But the biggest story from Leafs camp has been the young guys that have been coming in. Now, Easton Cowan is going to be going to the OHL. He's definitely going down. He's going back to London. I'm definitely going to try to get tickets to see that guy play in the OHL. But Fraser Minton, the 19-year-old that played for the Kamloops Blazers in the WHL, made the team. So if we're looking at his numbers, we're going to do a full video on this kid. I'm really intrigued, but I watched him play live the other night, and he was fantastic. But if we're just looking at his numbers strictly to start off, 67 points in 57 games played last year as an assistant captain, 31 goals and 36 assists. And then in the playoffs, he had 4 points in 10 games. But the previous year, he had 16 points in 17 playoff games, and he had 55 points with 20 goals. So you can see gradually this kid has gotten better. He's a really talented kid, but the reason I keep saying kid is because he's 19 years old. Like, I'm 27, and I'm looking at this kid like he is in the NHL doing his thing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm definitely excited watching him play. And because I knew I was going to end up talking about him and I wanted to make a video about him, when I went to the preseason game against Detroit in Toronto on the Thursday night, I was specifically watching the way that this guy was skating and taking pucks away and just his general IQ towards the game. And I was like fixated on him and Knies during their shifts. He is very smart. He gets to areas where the puck is going. And that's the thing. Like you hear these great hockey players say, you need to get to where the puck is going. You need to make that good choice. Like Wayne Gretzky's talked about it. You need to make these smart decisions. And he's one of those guys where he's like always knowing where the puck is going. Like it's fascinating how good he is. And I'm excited to see him play. And again, I'm going to make a full video on him, but he is another addition to this team. But I'm using Fox here because they've got an easy way to look at the whole, numbers and the whole scheme of things here. They show that their first game is on Wednesday at 7 p.m. against Montreal. Should be able to watch that game, thank God. 50, 21, and 11, like we mentioned, good for second. If we're looking at the team leaders here, in goals, William Nylander led the team last year. Mitch was number 1 in points. Plus minus was Austin Matthews. Shots on goal was Austin Matthews. I'm expecting him to have a big year. Takeaways was Mitch Marner. Goals against average in a limited sample size was Joseph Woll. And then you've got more stats going on here. And we're going to take a look at the roster pretty soon here. But if I've talked about it in most of the player previews, but there's a lot of guys this year where I expect them to do much better than last year. And there's guys that the Leafs have brought in that are going to make this team better. And I also believe that they will improve on their own like previous teams. Like they're going to improve on this team now with the players that they're playing with. And if we're looking at the lines currently, and again, don't look at the cap space or any of this stuff because the Leafs just made waiver moves and, there's going to be some changes, and it's been very apparent that there's going to be more changes going into the season. And this left wing fourth line here is going to be Noah Gregor. They have to sign him, but they don't really have the cap space for it. We have to see if Connor Timmins is going to be going on LTIR. We have to figure out all of those things. But the Maple Leafs have a very complete team, in my opinion, to start the season, because we don't know if Minton's going to stay with this team. But He's going to at least get the 9 games. So Bertuzzi, Matthews, Marner, I believe, is going to be a fascinating, quick, fun first line. I expect Bertuzzi to make a big impact. Max Domi, Tavares, and Nylander back on the wing with Minten having an impressive camp. And then you have Nyes, Minten, like I mentioned before, and Calle Yarncrook. So a very fast and defensively responsible line because Yarncrook is one of the best at doing that. And then Kampf and Reeves on that fourth line. And like I said, you're going to have Noah Gregor more than likely there. So just to come back to me for a second, if we're talking about the forwards, Bertuzzi's a guy that could pot 30, and playing with those guys, I really hope he does. He scored at the game I was at. Max Domi, again, another guy that I hope can chip in 20 to 25. He's going to be playing the Michael Bunting role, but Domi has more skill, and I think a lot of people think that Bertuzzi and Domi are just these tough guys that were brought in to fight. No, these are really good depth players that the Maple Leafs hopefully will hold on to past this season. I want Matthews to score 40 plus this year. I think he's got 50 in him, no problem. I want Willie to continue his scoring ways. He had 40, but I don't think it's a hot take to say that Willie could score 50 goals. Now, if all of these things came true, then the Leafs would be an incredible team and, everybody would be happy. But truly, when you look at this team, they're adding a lot of really, really good players that all could score like 20 to 25 goals. Like Yarncrook had 20 last year. You're hoping he can get 12 to 15. Nyes and Minten, like Nyes looks like he could score 20. Like Nyes is a really, really good player. Minten can fetch pucks. You're hoping for 10 to 12. If he plays the full season, if he can grab 10 to 12 in that rookie year as a 19-year-old, you'd be pumped. And you want Bertuzzi and Domi, like I said, in that 25, Bertuzzi 25 to 30 range, and then Domi in that, 18 to 22 range. That's what you want. So their forward group looks really impressive. And of course, Mitch always does Mitch things. He's going to put up 100 points this year. On the blue line, things have to be moved around here. So, of course, we've got Riley and Brody, which I think they're going to be pretty solid. You're hoping Brody doesn't regress this year. Then you're going to have McCabe and Klingberg as the second pairing, a defensively responsible guy with an offensive threat. And I think Klingberg will bring a lot of offense to this team on the back end. And then you're going to have Gio with the veteran experience playing with Liljegren, who needs to take a big step this year. Liljegren is far and away the most important piece on this blue line. I don't care what anybody says. If you think I'm crazy, Liljegren has to be good this year. If he's not, the Leafs are going to have problems on that back end. Connor Timmins is already injured after starting the preseason as like the leading scorer at one point. He had like 6 or 7 points in like 2 or 3 games. He's already hurt for like a month or so, which really sucks. Knock on wood, nothing else happens, and I'm wishing Timmins a speedy recovery. Also wishing Matt Murray the best. He had surgery today, I believe, on his hip. 6 to 8 months. That's wild, but I'm wishing the best for him. But this Leafs blue line, they need Liljegren to take a step this year. If he doesn't, this blue line's in trouble because they need that good depth from Liljegren on the bottom pairing. Now, in goal, we still have Samsonov and Wool, and Martin Jones actually cleared waivers today, which a lot of people were surprised, myself included, because teams need goaltending, including Tampa, but they're doing some cap shenanigans stuff. They're smart. They know what they're doing. But in goal this year, Samsonov needs to play like 50 games. He needs to show that he's a real starter. He needs to go in there and play like at least to a 910 to a 915 save percentage. And if Joseph Woll can continue what he did last year and play 15 to 25 games in that range, you can use Martin Jones to fill in on the other games. And, you're hoping for more than 50 from Samsonov. But a lot of people are saying maybe Wall has the outside chance to take the crease. I think the Leafs will take that very slowly. If Wall just severely outplays him, then of course, no problem. Much like a Jack Campbell, Freddie Anderson scenario from a couple years ago. But we have to remember Joseph Woll is still developing. I think he's very good. He's still younger, he's still a younger goaltender, I guess. But this is kind of the years where they start to figure themselves out. I'm looking forward to see how he does this year. I think he's going to have a great season. But I'm I am expecting the Leafs to win the division. I'm expecting them to be one of the top 5 teams in the NHL. And of course, people who aren't Leaf fans are going to watch this and, of course. But this team has a chance to be special. They have a lot of depth. They have the team toughness. And they've brought in some guys that know how to put up points. This is what they needed, right? They've got a bit of everything. And at the deadline, they're probably going to add some depth on that blue line. They're probably going to have to add some size, some physicality. We'll have to see who's available. I'm kind of surprised the Leafs didn't at least, maybe make a claim on Bogosian. But again, the cap stuff has to work out. They'd probably have to trade somebody else. But as of right now, this is my preview for the Maple Leafs. If some crazy stuff happens and I have to redo this video, I'll do it. And we're going to be talking about the Leafs a lot this year. I want to do game previews and game reviews. So if you want to see stuff like that from me, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Sound off in the comments about the Leafs. What do you expect this year? I'm really excited. I've got this great feeling in me right now. I want them to win so bad. I love and appreciate you guys as always. Go Leafs, go, and leave a comment. Peace.